So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about democracy, and I don't know if you know, in 2011, the British people voted against improving the democratic system in this country. Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
No. Can you explain it a little bit?
Not in detail, but there was a vote for a referendum for an alternative voting system, whereby it wouldn't just be by the majority winning, that it's something a bit closer to proportional representation. I think it was that you'd have like a first, second, and third choice or something, and that would be weighted into what happened. So if your first choice lost, your second choice would suddenly count. But we didn't like that for some bizarre reason en masse. It was a bit more.
Well, it's also the fact that that's how we vote for mayors, and that's how political parties vote for their leaders. But somehow it's not how we should vote for people to lead the country. So it's a bit weird.
Yeah. Do you believe in democracy? Does it work?
I was just thinking about this yesterday, actually.
Yeah. Did you come to any conclusion?
No.
No?
I mean, it is. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really here to talk. I just wanted to hear you guys.
Okay. We are definitely here to talk, but we're more about getting other people's opinions than our own. Because the reason this came up is because we were talking. Do you know Slavoj Žižek?
Yeah.
Apparently, he's not into democracy. Rowan said, "Well, I mean, democracy." But we're the people speak, so we're kind of into democracy.
Yeah.
But does it actually work? Are we actually onto a loser here? Are we wasting our time with all this, getting people to talk? And
There is a good point about democracies. That I mean, the will of the people. If the people aren't educated, if the people are stupid, their will might be a bit stupid as well.
yeah, okay. Has that happened?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, to
Yeah.
some extent, you
Yeah.
can see in the United States.
Yeah. But is that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, sure.
Is that the will of the people? So should we just accept the will of? I mean, we talked a lot yesterday about, especially at the very beginning, about Donald Trump. Do we accept that's what the people have chosen? Do we accept that?
Did they, or was it the Russian sort of meddling in the vote? I don't know.
Okay. So you think that democracy could have been gamed in America by the Russians?
Well, yeah, it's one thing.
Okay. Any thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I don't think the will of the people is a good way to govern things. I mean, majority consensus is nice, but it sounds like it would be a nice idea, but it demonstrably doesn't work in many situations. Like, people are a bit too selfish, and we can't deal with bigger issues when it's like that. I'm not pretending I have an alternative, just...
You don't think that the will of the people is a particularly useful...
It depends what you mean by useful. I think it's like anything, it's contextual. There are situations where it's a great way of governing things, and I just wonder if a system shouldn't even strive to be like a concrete idea, but should have flexibility built into it. Like, certain decisions should be meritocratic, certain decisions should be democratic, certain decisions should be authoritarian, perhaps.
Okay, so kind of like a mixed decision-making process.
Yeah, and it depends on what we're talking about. Like, something like the NHS, I don't think should ever be in the hands of one person, and it should never be able to be eradicated on the whim of a fickle public. Maybe it should be somewhat like meritocratic, whereas something like the army should be a bit more authoritarian, just in how it's governed, not that we should have an authoritarian army, or things like that.
Okay, so a democratic army wouldn't work, because you would spend too much time deciding what your strategy is going to be in a conflict situation. I don't know. Any thoughts on this? Is there a better system than
Maybe.
Yeah?
Well, I don't have one, but
Yeah.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
We might slip into like a Britain's Got Talent kind of voting system in future, the way of politics.
But isn't that quite successful, Britain's Got Talent?
Well, yes, but I don't know if you should... it depends how it's done on the politician and what talents they have, and
Yeah. Could we bring in more of a kind... Are you familiar with the game show or reality show Britain's Got Talent?
No, but I guess I know of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty
Okay.
self-descriptive.
Can you explain how does it work?
I don't know actually how it works. I just know that people. Well, all I know is people perform and then people vote whether they stay on for another round.
Yeah.
And that's all. But I don't know if that's actually how it works. But that's how I guess.
Yeah. And now,
Because I've never seen it.
I now realise because we did a pizza making political workshop on Wednesday night, and I realised that I meant to have that kind of system on the
Oh, I see.
on the board, like where, because the thing about all of these reality shows is somebody, rather than somebody being chosen, people are eliminated one at a time. It's obviously a much more lengthy, but more dramatic process where people keep on being eliminated. So, is that a better way to choose a leader where you just eliminate people one at a time rather than vote for the winner straight away? Hello, come and take a seat. So we've got Rowan, we've got Rick, we've got Inesh, and Mikey. What's your name?
Dan.
Dan, welcome. At the moment, we're talking about democracy. Does it work? Is there a better system? Rowan's proposed that we should have a mixed system of decision making with different approaches to different types of decision. Rick has kind of loosely suggested that the voting system could be a bit more like Britain's Got Talent, where instead of voting for your preferred candidate, you vote off each candidate one at a time until you finally arrive at a winner.
I don't know if I'm necessarily suggesting. I'm just thinking, wondering how to get people more
Would it get-
involved. People more involved in politics. I
Would
guess.
it conjure more participation, this kind of system? Yeah.
Isn't it kind of already a bit like that, though? I mean, that Farage and Boris's popularity came from the fact that they were just media whores and nothing else, really. So,
Yeah.
Same with Trump. He's a media man who everyone loves him, and he's been building it up for 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, is it something where this is democracy and we just accept the will of the people, and that's kind of it? That's how it works?
Somebody said recently that that it's a confusion because we've got a system where we vote for somebody and they make the decisions. And recently we had this election where we all made the decisions. So there's actually a slight confusion about the two different systems running together, and neither of them really work very well. So I don't know how you.
Are you just saying that because you don't agree with the outcome?
Yeah. But I mean, what would happen if they voted to bring back hanging?
Yeah, that's what I think it's come up before, and we've
The lowest possible. What's the common denominator?
Okay.
I would be worried that if they did, like capital punishment, that would come back if it was put to the
But
public.
if it's the will of the people, shouldn't we have capital punishment?
Well, I disagree, but yeah.
I mean, this is the thing here. A lot of people. Hello, welcome to Talkaoke. We have got Inesh, we've got Dan, or Danny, Dan, and we've got Rick. What's your name? Danny, and
Rowan.
And I'm Mikey. At the moment, we're talking about democracy. Is it the best system available to us?
Did you say democracy?
Not democracy.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said democracy.
Democracy.
Oh, democracy, right. What is that? What is democracy?
Can someone explain what democracy is?
It's a thing that doesn't work but makes people feel good.
Okay.
All right. I prefer things that make people feel good that do work.
Yeah.
I take them sometimes.
Is there a better system than democracy?
Is there a worse system than democracy?
I don't know. Anyone? Worse system?
I'd say there's many worse systems. There probably isn't a better one that we have, but there probably is a better one imaginable.
What do you mean that we have?
I mean, like all the ones that have been tried seem to have made things worse in terms of people's quality of life. But it's not to say that what we have is the best.
Okay.
I've thought about this a little bit, and what I'm proposing. I'm standing in the general election in a few weeks' time. Yeah, but I mean, I'm not in their system. I'm standing in all constituencies.
Right.
Yeah. So, but you just have to put my name on the ballot, or the name of my character. The name of my character on the ballot.
Yeah.
Obviously, not my own name.
Yeah.
what I'm proposing is that we get an emperor, right, who can then basically who's tops the queen and the king. And what that emperor is, he or she, or an empress, or both. And what they're going to do is they're going to be chosen based on their, physical, spiritual, emotional development, and they will trump the stupid people's decisions. So people will be allowed to vote, and if they get it wrong, he'll just trump that. He or she will trump that.
Like
so for example, like capital punishment, right? Stupid people would say, let's bring it in. So he would trump that as a moral, the moral arbiter. Yeah.
Okay, so it's almost like a safeguard, like a sort of, like an overlord, overlady kind of thing. Are you impressed by this system?
Well, kind of. It's like an asymmetric veto system. So one person's vetoes just counts for more than all others. But you just made me think of how we might get over a capital punishment referendum. We just capitally punish all those who vote for it. Problem solved. It would never come up again.
I'm not sure if I would be in favour of that, considering both my parents voted for Brexit. Okay, so is this a better system? Do we need an emperor/empress?
Can only one person be perfect? Is anyone perfect enough to be able to make all the decisions? And then you're going back to kind of, Saddam Hussein, thinking he was the man, and all these other countries, and then in some ways they all had stable countries, and we've gone along and tried to say democracy is better, and they've all fallen apart and gone into chaos.
So in a way, you could say that about Saddam Hussein, the worst form of government for the Iraqis, until you depose Saddam Hussein and impose democracy, and that's actually worse, it appears, according to Dan, than what existed before. So in that case,
it's not worse, but it's caused other problems. It's caused other issues, and things haven't balanced out yet. I mean, they probably will at some point.
I've never been to Iraq. Not one of my planned holiday destinations in the near future. Although, by the way, one of my proposals as potential politician is, I think we should definitely send Tony Blair and his family, children, to Iraq on a holiday for a couple of weeks, without any security, but just you should go and see what he's done there. But my suspicion is that actually for a lot of people who live there, it is worse than it was. I don't know.
Okay. Inesh, any thoughts on this?
If you got on the wrong side of Saddam Hussein, you were in a pretty deep shit, I think, beforehand.
Okay, so it seems like we're in a.
But I completely agree. I don't know much about the situation, but so the situation got worse, even though it was pretty bad to begin with. But was that because it happened suddenly and through force, as opposed to being a slow and gradual change? Is it necessary that democracy is worse than Saddam Hussein, but had it happened slowly, it might have been better instead? And so it's not that the system changed or what it became, but how it changed.
I think we're forgetting that why they went into Iraq. And that's what I find really, by the way, entertaining about Donald Duck, whatever his name is that I really thought it was quite bold of him to say that they shouldn't have gone into Iraq, but once they were there, they should have nicked all the oil, which is basically a bit like saying, I shouldn't really rob your house, but once I'm in, do you know what I mean? Nick everything, right?
Once I've broken into your home and murdered your family, I might as well
nick everything, for God's sake. Which they, by the way, they actually have nicked it all, probably, because I don't know how the oil gets out, BP, I don't know, whatever. But by the way, just I also wanted to say that my vision for the emperor is that we definitely, from my understanding, they definitely have to be a vegan. Because if you're going around, as Pythagoras said, if you go around mass murdering animals, then can't really.
Pythagoras a vegan?
I don't know, actually.
Yeah.
He was either a vegan or a really, really bad hypocrite, right? But he said, if we go around murdering loads of animals, then we can't expect us, to be treating each other well.
Right.
So you definitely have to be a vegan, because my idea. But by the way, in terms of what you said about Saddam Hussein and other countries where there's just one person, yeah. But that person, the point is that person needs to be, an absolutely exemplary example of what it is to be a human being,
so
which means
a regal vegan.
Yeah, but like it's not the royals that we've got, not like that flipping, philandering, Nazi sympathising, right, low life scum of the earth that's decided to, not engage in any public engagements anymore. Yeah.
Okay, so
how does this person arrive at being the emperor?
how do you find this person? Because I think this is something we talked about a lot yesterday. The normal process does not throw up the kind of person that you're imagining.
Well, bearing in mind that as a social, as a social experimentalist myself, I view everything as a series of ongoing social experiments. I think that this is. What we're living in is actually it's a social experiment, and the creators of this social experiment, that you could call God or consciousness. So, as a social experiment, what I would propose now in this reality and this part, in this stage, in this particular social experiment, is that it would simply be done using technology, and everybody would be able, everybody who wanted to would be able to vote. So it wouldn't just be. So, for example, to vote for the emperor in this country, I think we should allow. Everybody a vote, and I also think we should proportion in other species. So, for example, that's why I say it would have to be a vegan, because otherwise, if he wasn't a vegan, he'd be hated by the cow community and the chicken community, because they hate people who eat meat. So, I think they should have a say. I think children should be able to vote, and it will be done very, very simply online. There'll be some kind of hub where where potential emperors and empresses would be interviewed, and then people would be able to be given a vote, just as an experiment to see what would happen.
How would you work out which candidate the cows preferred?
Well, I mean, it'd be kind of obvious, wouldn't it? If they weren't vegan, as I said, then they'd obviously be hated by the cow community. I mean, you'd hate. I presume that you wouldn't vote for.
I'm going to say Danny. Let me just get a final thought from Dan.
Thanks for this lovely conversation. We're going back to a kind of weird, twisted up democracy that's got all the disadvantages of giving people the vote.
So you're not buying this vegan emperor thing?
I'm afraid Hitler was a vegetarian, wasn't he? And I think we're going somewhere along those lines.
Okay, so you think you're just going to get in another vegetarian, anti-Semitic dictator? Okay.
If you leave it up to people voting, God knows what will happen.
Okay, so is democracy a system that is fit for purpose? That's what we're talking about now. We've got a new face to the table. You've rushed in.
I hear the word vegan.
Okay, well, I mean,
a couple of times.
Well, Danny has proposed this idea that we need to have a vegan emperor in charge, and the emperor has got the power of veto. So if the public at large, politicians make stupid decisions, this emperor can veto them. For example, capital punishment has been said to be a stupid decision. I think Brexit was mentioned as well.
Can he suggest policies, or is he just literally there to veto stuff?
Oh, I see. No, he can. Of course, he can do whatever he likes. He's the flipping emperor. It's a silly question.
So he can propose legislation as well. Okay. I mean, what can you? So, what's your name?
My name's Ket.
Ket.
Yeah.
We got Inesh, we got Rick, we got Danny, Rowan. My name's Mikey. Can you just explain, because you're interested in the vegan side of this, why vegan?
Well, basically, as an ex-serial killer myself, I used to, be involved with the torture and murder of animals, and I'm very ashamed about it, to be honest, even though I think it's important to express it in public.
Did you commission?
No, I was worse than that. I was a complete coward. I would never do it myself. It would just be horrible. So I got someone else to do it, who I don't even know, to be honest. And Yeah, so I think that it's very important that the people who, if we're going to be led or whatever that means, if someone's going to have that much power, they've got to be exemplary in terms of their ethics, their spirituality, the way they live, their body, the way they treat their body. So they have to be, they would have to be, in my opinion, have to be a vegan because, otherwise, they're basically, if you're not a vegan, you're basically, if you have milk, as far as I'm concerned, you're a cow-sucking pervert and thief. And if you have meat, you're basically just a murderer for no real reason when you can get every fruit, vegetable and nut and pulse and everything under the sun. Yeah. So I think it's very important that such a person should be a vegan.
Okay.
I want to come back to this, but I just wanted to be pedantic about Dan's thing, because this comes up in conversation so much. Hitler was not a vegetarian. That's completely anachronistic. He had a gastrointestinal disorder, and his doctor told him not to eat meat for a very short period. But of course, the meat lobby and their very narrow-minded view jumps on that all the time. It comes up so often. Yeah, I kind of want it on a T-shirt, like Hitler was not a vegetarian. Yeah. But anyway, sorry.
Okay, all right.
So I've been vegan for 23 years, I think, and it started out not necessarily because of the slaughter of animals, but it was a personal path for myself. Yeah. Maybe that's now part of my philosophy.
But you must have been about
ethics.
3 when you decided to become a vegan.
I'm older than I look.
Is that the lack of
it's the lack of dairy and animal protein in my system that's probably causing that. But however, I chatted to a friend of mine many years ago who was the son of a butcher who tried to go vegetarian vegan quite a few times and failed. He has now gone mostly vegetarian. I only meet him every few years, but he's part of a think tank. Yeah, and he does a lot of writing. And a few years ago, I bumped into him in London, and we had a walk through London Bridge, Southwark Cathedral. He was telling me all about the history of crazy things that happened in London over the last few hundred years. He's full of these facts and knowledge. And he ended up saying that the future of our planet and the future of our society, that there's only one real outcome, is that if the entire society grew our own food that was freely available to everybody on every street, that we could just go, I want to get some pears. Oh yeah, let's just pop out the road. Yeah, just go across the road. Oh yeah, there's a pear tree. Everything is freely available. We all look after it, and the predominantly vegan diet is the predominant route that most of society around the planet should take. Is the only way we can stop a kind of a catastrophic disaster happening. One of the main reasons was maybe it was a spiritual path, but at the same time there was a very big ethical reason, and it was more about giving my money to big corporations and making the decision to go vegetarian or vegan, or making an alternative choice. It doesn't have to be any one of those things. As soon as you make a personal choice for a premeditated reason, that's going to cause a change, so cause and effect.
So it's more about thinking about it and making the decision.
Yeah, and you're saying I'm actually doing something that I believe in, and maybe the side effect of me going vegan is that I'm now helping other smaller businesses make their own businesses and create
so you're like a vegan advisor or something like that?
No.
Okay. Anyway, so what? I mean, what do you think about? What do you think about the proposal? I'm going to maybe go around the table. The proposal for the vegan emperor,
the vegan dictator.
Vegan dictator. Let's say.
I know. But the thing is, I do know some very militant vegans. Not necessarily about proposing going vegan, who are just nutty people.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't matter whether you're vegan or not, or whatever diet you subscribe to, you can still be an insane person. Yeah. And I think it's down to. Okay, maybe that's the wrong word. You can be...
Hang on, I'm asking the questions here. I'll come to you in a second.
Okay, maybe they have the idea for, if they're taking this role to be an individual that helps decide rules and decisions to help the betterment of the society and a greater mass of people that are following them, he or she may not be doing it for the good of the people, but just because they themselves think this is what I want to do. It's not in the best interests of the role or the job.
All right, Kev, is there a mechanism then in that case to actually, because what we're saying, is there a mechanism to find a person that's somehow non-egoistic, that's thinking about society at large and not themselves? Is it possible to find that person to be the vegan emperor?
No, I don't think that any emperor or any one person. I personally think it's a society change where the laws of society that we've known up to now, and the systems we have put in place up to now have all failed. And I think we need something completely new that doesn't exist, and we have to collectively find out what that is. And it's only through cooperation and learning to give and take is the only way we will survive.
Well, we're working on this actually at the People's Speak to take one of our cards. That's exactly what we're working on. No, stay. You have to.
I'm working, so.
Well, I keep an eye because but Danny's got some questions that he wanted to. What was the question? What do you think about this?
Well, firstly, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. Of course, we have to all work together, and it's not going to take. It's about raising consciousness and da. But I think you can find people like that. I think they're extremely rare, right? But I know people like that.
Yeah.
So you can find people like that. I mean, the only danger is for me is to start taking this more seriously than it is, because and forgetting that actually this is a virtual reality. I just went on that near-death experience. That was just another form of virtual reality. This is a virtual reality game, simulation game, and therefore
when you say this, what are you talking about?
This experience,
the
human experience,
right,
is a virtual reality simulation, and so it's important for me to keep remembering that, and not to get sort of drawn into the mind control of of the system, and it's of what I describe as Uncle Caesar. So I think as an experiment, as we keep remembering that this is a social experiment, with today's technology, I think we can have a lot of fun, right? If nothing else, and it's something that I've sort of been playing around with myself, is to set up a system of voting for an emperor of this country, who can then start dismantling all the joke systems that are in place.
So actually, what you're saying is we could set this. That's better. We could set this system up. In parallel, in a way, with the current political systems. We just need to do it, publicise it, find the person, call them the emperor, and
start the voting. Start the voting. So, for example, the voting is now, voting for things is now absolutely simple. Just a click of a button, right? Everyone's got, most people got a smartphone, right? So start the voting. For example, I'm, as standing in this election, I would like to have a weekly vote. Where we vote which corporation gets disbanded, and where and their money given to good causes. So, for example, we could start off with we could have everyone around the world gets a vote. Do we want to shut down the corporation of McDonald's and give all the money to the NHS? Right. So, and we could do that without them, without their system, as a way of also parodying the stupidness and inaneness of their system.
Okay, that will make sense. Hang on, because we've got a new face to the table. Let's do this in the right order. So we've got Inesh, what's your name?
Martin.
We had Rick. I'm sorry to put you off like this, Rick. And we've got Danny, we've got Rowan, my name's Mikey. Come and sit down, come get involved in this. We're talking about, can we come up with a better system than the current political system? Is it a kind of virtual reality game, as Danny says? Anyway, and we can actually create a better game or a better system. What was your name again, sorry?
Martin.
Martin, that's right, sorry, yeah.
So just picking up from your interesting points, just to move that a little bit towards media and films and so on.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the gigantic failure of imagination of the film and TV industry.
Yeah.
Which is, we've all seen political documentaries, right?
Yeah.
And those political documentaries very often are intended to inspire you to take some sort of action, vote a particular way, or contact well, Michael Moore documentaries, for example. But I'm sure you can think of lots of better examples. What we've yet to see, or at any rate I have never seen, is something where the vote is in the film. So rather than this 20th century model of over here is the cinema where we sit, like in 1950s Paris smoking Gauloises and watching a film, and then we're supposed to go out and go onto the streets or go somewhere and then do something about it. That's ridiculous. What we can do now is vote during the film. So, to take your example, we have a film about McDonald's and the NHS, and then the vote is in the film. So you don't have to go out, it's all one thing. And then the audience can sit there and they can see their results. And also you could, because obviously as you're aware, there are complexities around that, right? So you can make it not just one vote, but sort of a few votes during the film. You can also do this in virtual reality, so you can have a social hub, to use the thing that they want you to tick when you come up with a virtual reality idea. So it can be a social hub. You have a film, and the audience is watching all over the world, represented by avatars in the VR space, and then they vote during the film, and that changes the outcome of their experience.
Would it change the experience, or would it change the wider reality?
Do both. Because it becomes a far more powerful and effective tool for bringing about change. Because at the moment, those documentaries, much as I love them, everyone leaves sort of fizzing with energy. But, you got to take the tube home, you got to, eat, you got to, blah, 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 whatever it is. So the energy sort of dissipates.
So
but if it can be one
bottle of Coca-Cola, it loses the fizz.
If I'd ever drunk Coca-Cola, I would know whether that's true. But since I never have...
You don't need to drink it, you just need to...
Okay. No, that's actually not true. Sorry, no.
Okay,
no,
we've got a new face to the table. So we've got Ines, we've got Martin. What's your name?
Tanya.
Tanya. And we got Danny and Rowan, and my name's Mikey. I think, talking about fizz, we're starting to fizz here with some new ideas, some more exciting ideas. Tanya, have you got something to say, or should we just go?
Well, I can also wait.
Okay, yeah.
So I was saying, I'm intrigued by the idea. It's something I want to see as well as an experiment. But what I worry about is that people are very fickle, and that they can have their emotions lead them astray. And a powerful film with a powerful rhetoric might make someone think something they don't really believe, but they're like, yeah, I believe that, hit the button. And then they get out and wait, why did I just do that? That was really silly.
Yeah.
I haven't got a concrete example, but it's just like that. I mean, that's how politicians work right now, isn't it?
They might have seen the film Carnage that was recently shown on...
Haven't come across Carnage.
I think Danny's aware of it.
I'll Google it later, but you know what I mean anyway, yeah.
So, thank you, you're absolutely right. And to prove your point, I have made a film which is showing this afternoon at the Sci-Fi Festival, which is this terrible, terrible idea. So it's like a gladiator film, okay? It's not just unethical, it's like evil.
Yeah.
So it's a number of fights, and the end of each fight, the audience votes what happens to the losing fighter.
Right.
It's as evil, it's like Running Man, exactly.
Right.
It's just like Running Man. So it's evil and wicked, so it completely, backs up your point. So we'll see what happens.
Have you shown this film to an audience before?
No, this is the first time ever.
So you don't know what they're going to... Have they got options, or do they just come up with the options themselves?
Mercy or justice, thumbs up, thumbs down, just like in the gladiator fights. Yeah?
Okay.
So yes, there's no other option. Yes.
Okay.
And that does, again, just to, and then, but that has a knock-on effect that they can't quite anticipate in terms of the story. Yes.
Okay.
Game show. 4 o'clock this afternoon, Stratford Sci-Fi Festival. Free! So I got in a plug for the movie already.
Okay, all right.
So
okay,
now
that sounds fascinating. We have to find out what happens. Tanya.
Yeah, I was still with the idea of bringing more direct voting and agency to people, and the idea of bringing it into movies. On one hand, I have to say it might be a good idea, but on the other hand, we have to see that this is harshly influencing. Like, as you already pointed out, it is making people jump to conclusions without doing their proper research, and that's what exactly happening with Brexit, for example. People didn't do their proper research and just voted on an emotion which they felt welcome somewhere in a group of leavers. Or the same thing can happen. Like, movies are not always a force of good. There are movies which are like right-wing populism.
Right.
Do you really want them to vote about immigration or that in that film? That would be outrageous.
Can I just ask, do you think it's bad to vote on an emotional...
I think it is important to find a balance between the emotion and the rational facts. You cannot bend your reality towards what you want it to be, although you can dream about a change, but you have to enforce the change yourself without kind of making it too weird.
So it's not about eliminating emotion, it's about balancing the emotion with the reality.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I concur, because I think if you take an emotion out of a decision, suddenly people are just going to get too clinical and they do everything by the numbers, and that's not always how we want. We don't want to view people as numbers, and they'll be making decisions about how much money to give the NHS, and they'll be putting a value on human life and things like that. And
okay, so we can't actually just do it just by the numbers. We have to have an emotional side, but that emotional side can be manipulated.
And that's where the emperor comes in, you see.
Yeah.
Because the emperor makes sure that none of that happens, and the emperor is actually there for the people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what the problem with this emperor theory is? You are dependent on a person which is completely impartial to all arguments, to a person which is completely the one, like, almighty authority, like some people who believe in religion, God would be. And that would make it highly dependent on the person in post. I think a better way of democracy is basic democracy, is democracy which is led by ourselves through consensus and discussion. And that's also possible in big groups, although nobody is really buying my argument.
So in a way you think this emperor doesn't have to be maybe a person, but almost the projection of a person based on what everybody, the whole community thinks. We're talking about democracy. Can we do democracy 2.0, 3.0, perhaps you'd call it? Can we actually improve the system? Do we need democracy at all? That's what we've been talking about. Danny has thrown a suggestion to the table, which seems to be running, and which is that there should be a spiritually superior vegan emperor that vetoes really decisions more than making decisions, to make sure, as a kind of counter to a more emotional, reactive, democratic process. But Tanya's pointed out that, there's been a lot of people that have kind of asked how can you actually find a person like this? Does a person like this actually exist? And is it too much authority and power to give to one person? So that's what we're talking about right now. Martin suggested that actually the democratic process should be within the entertainment process, and he's actually made a film on at 4 o'clock at Stratford Picture House, is that right? And where the democratic process is within the film itself. You get to vote you get to make a choice between mercy and justice, or something like that. Is that right? Yeah. So that's where we are right now. We have got Rowan, we've got Danny, we've got Tanya, we've got Martin, we've got Ines, and
Tony.
Tony, welcome, and I'm Mikey. So that's where we are right now. Any views to kick off with? Tony, you're just going to sit and pick up the pieces for now?
Just thinking choice. Democracy is kind of having a choice, isn't it? Well, one of the things it is. When we do anything, do we actually have a choice? I guess that's what.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm thinking about awareness, bringing awareness to our actions, and if we're aware of what we're doing, then maybe we have a kind of choice as to whether we do one thing or the other. But if we're just sort of automatically moving through life without really thinking about it and being aware of what we're doing, then who is it that's making that choice or who's deciding what we do.
Do we really have a choice? Do we need awareness to have a choice? That's some of the questions here.
I think we definitely have a choice. We just need to enforce it. The thing is, when you think about the process of basic democracy, which is completely based on the internet, so that people can actually have discussions online and find voting online, it makes people have choices and discussions around topics which were before drawn out. For example, I'm German. In Germany, we have a massive debate about marriage for all, and it was sort of dead before we started discussions again. And it was like, our government is conservative, we don't have a choice to give them the choice to marry. But now we kind of have it again because there's so much pressure which comes out of the internet generation to finally make the marriage for all. So we definitely have it, but we need to get active to really ensure that we always get that choice, that we always get these decisions.
So it's about a level of participation. I mean, but does that kind of actually tally with what Tony's saying? Because he's saying you need to have the awareness to have the choice, and that discussion, in a way, is about awareness. Martin, what were you going to say?
You do have a choice, and if you go to the cinema at 4 o'clock, seriously.
6 audience members.
Seriously, yes. So just coming back to your very interesting point before, which is even more interesting given what you're talking about with the internet and the internet generation, that when you're talking about the idea of a film or a VR project or something like that, which talks about a particular issue and gets people to vote on it. Now, it could be manipulative and evil and try and push people very much in just one way, or it could be done like a trial. You could have it made by 2 teams, and so there's one team tries to get people to vote in defense of McDonald's, say, and the other team tries to vote get people to vote against McDonald's. And there's like an overall supervisor who is kind of impartial, and then you vote at the end of that. Now, what I would suggest is that the great advantage of that is it would require people to look at the other person's point of view. And much as I love the internet, and am, wedded to the internet in every conceivable way, the great problem with the internet is that people all across the political spectrum are going into these worlds where they only listen to people who kind of agree with them. And that's one of the great problems that we've got, obviously, and one of the reasons we've ended in this slightly ghastly situation that we're in. Whereas if you had something that required people to see both sides before they could actually vote, then it might actually be a step forward from that point of view. Of course, like anything, it can be manipulated and done badly, and maybe both points of view could be wrong. But in some ways, it would be a step forward from what we've got at the moment, where people are just listening to people that they agree with.
Listening to people they agree with, and not listening to those who don't. Is there a way to facilitate this? This seeing of the other side, this hearing of the other viewpoint, the understanding of the other viewpoint. Is there a way of doing it?
What if an extension of this is you go into your voting booth, you make your choice, and you're then shown a series of videos or something is given some content by the other side that's made to try and change your opinion. And then you have the option of changing your vote, almost like Prisoner's Dilemma style, to the other side, and only those who change their vote will count, so that only those who have actually reasoned and weighed up the consequences count. And just as an experiment, I wonder what would happen there. And let's figure out. Let's assume that there's like a check and a balance, so you can't game the system, but something like that.
Were you going to say something, Ines? You've not said much recently? No.
That's an excellent point. I mean, and we're already seeing things like that. For example, with some newspapers require you to answer a couple of questions about the story before you can comment on it, because they're so sick of people just going, headline, oh, blah, 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 and they don't even bother to read the damn article. So that's a step towards that.
What sort of questions do they ask?
Well, it's just very simple, basic. Anyone who's actually read the article will be able to answer the most basic factual thing. But you have to answer that in order to be able to comment on the article.
Could that work in the ballot box as well? Like, say, for example, example,
well,
before you go and vote, I wish to leave or remain, you have to explain what the European Union is.
well,
Would that work?
You're kidding, but or maybe not. I don't know. But the possibility for abuse of that obviously vast, and obviously in the States there is this ghastly. For example, if you Google it, there is this truly chilling example of a reading comprehension question that was given to non-white voters in the 50s and 60s in the South, various states. And it's brilliant and so evil because it's this little paragraph and it appears to be completely simple and straightforward. None of the words are particularly long. It's all, apparently quite normal little paragraph. And when you start to read it, it's just turns your brain inside out because you realize it means absolutely nothing. And then they have these questions which are just impossible to answer. And this was used routinely in various states as a way of disqualifying voters. So I take your point, but the potential for abuse of answer a question before you can vote is enormous. If you're talking about real, now I'm going to exercise my political choice voting.
Daniel?
Just very quickly, when you only count the votes of these people who actually changed their opinion, you eliminate what Tony said, that you don't really have a choice anymore. Because then people have only the choice to change it or stay with their decision but are not counted in the majority opinion. What is important is that everyone has their opinion, has a platform for their opinion, but in a way where you still need to discuss with others so that you cannot go into echo bubbles you just described.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out a way how to manage that. And I still think that the internet is one of the best possibilities we have at our hands at the moment.
But what Martin's been saying is the exact opposite is happening. That actually the internet is just allowing people to sort of surround themselves with like-minded people so that there's no possibility of hearing the other side, of seeing a different point of view. Well, there is a possibility quite easily just by, tapping a few search terms into Google, but it doesn't seem that that's the way that human beings like to investigate and explore things.
Maybe we can combine this idea with VR that we were talking about earlier, and also kind of ripping off an episode of Rick and Morty where, perhaps as you go into the voting booth, you could have some kind of VR experience, and let's pretend for a second that you can speed up time and you could live in the world you vote for and see the real consequences. And then you come out of the experience and we're like, actually, that didn't work out so well, or something along those lines. That's an extreme, silly example, but you can imagine a slightly more real world equivalent.
Okay.
It's a great example, and I think it's a lovely idea. And obviously we're all sort of terribly depressed about Brexit, but many people are terribly depressed about Brexit, but one or two people are depressed about Brexit. I think that would have been a great. I'm very split, I have to say, but anyway, but I think that would have been a great idea, and one certainly in the terms of the Remain campaign clearly failed. And it failed to give people something to hold on to imaginatively other than sort of fear of immediate consequences. But something like that would have been a great way to maybe get people to think about it a bit more. It's a lovely idea.
Okay.
Absolutely. I've got lots of ideas, don't want to actually do anything to put any of them into action. But anyway, perhaps we need to, I'm sure people are working on, have worked on that, is create social media that is deliberately, trying to offer that to people. So you enter an arena so you deliberately want to meet people who have different but respectful. Because one of the problems I have, with the stuff I put out on my social media is most of the people that follow what I do kind of agree with it, whatever that means, and then but the people that don't are just obnoxious. They're not.
So it's not really a very constructive forum. The comments underneath.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So are you seeking for a more constructive discussion than the comment?
Yeah,
how could that happen? Maybe we could help Danny here. How could that actually happen? Where,
well,
yeah.
Well,
I think you'd get a more constructive discussion if people were able to get that perspective of people who don't agree with them. The problem at the moment is that they don't, because of the way that the algorithms on social media work. But if, whether it's through VR or any other technologies that kind of enable people to empathize with someone who has the opposite opinion for them, then you wouldn't get this kind of confrontation and people being obnoxious.
Is it about politely asking people that run the social media platforms to change their algorithms? Would that work?
No.
No. Why?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if you would do something like that and switch around social media to force us to see other opinions, it would not necessarily help the discussion sometimes. So what I sometimes see is that I live in my own echo bubble and I want to break out of it. But if I invite people to have a discussion with me who are, for example, on the other side of the argument, some people just comment very insulting, just don't really read the articles.
Why do you think they're so
like
insulting?
That's because people get emotional about weird topics.
So it's an immediate emotional response.
The thing is, we probably need to find a way. On one hand, I like the idea about the social media where you find other people who are the opposite opinion. People will most people will probably not want to be part of it. And I think for us to work as a society, we need to kind of start doing that. But how can we find a way that we don't get too emotional about subjects, we at the same time are not too rational about it,
right?
And on the other hand, actually discuss arguments and not just trading insults.
So how do we make it less awkward and confrontational to have that conversation, either online or maybe face to face, with those that we don't agree with, that have got a different viewpoint?
I do think that, again, much as I love the internet, much as I love digital, this is one area where actual physical sort of being physically with people makes a big difference, because it's a lot harder to be a troll if you're physically with someone. But I mean, what's your experience? Because you've probably got more, bizarrely vast experience of sitting talking to people around a table.
It's true.
And,
it is true.
So, I mean, what do you think? I mean, obviously you're using physical experiences.
I mean, that's in a way why I do this, and why, to me, the live event is so much more powerful than the online version of this, and we only put the stuff online, hello internet audience, really for the people here around the table, so that they feel like it's doing something, it's going out there.
Right, yes.
But it's actually about the I mean, I think in a space like this, which is kind of cozy, Shoreditch, startup location, we're not going to get too much confrontation. But out on the street, out in a shopping centre or somewhere like that, or in a very polarised part of the country, then you will start to get people actually that have got very different viewpoints. And there's another part of this which is important then that comes into play, is the instability in this system, that you don't know what you're going to be talking about. So whereas you might find a group of people that vehemently disagree about, let's say, European Union, there's other things they will agree about. There's other things they'll find connections about, be it humour, be it just off the top of my head, football, be it something else, like opportunities, aspirations. All of these things people will have connections with. There's no we've got so much more in common. Even these obnoxious people that are trolling your social media sites, they've got there's other elements that they're really you connect with. They might even be somehow right-wing vegans. I don't know.
I mean, there's a brilliant idea there that you've had about, you could have debates within teams of football supporters. So, West Ham United supporters.
For example,
debate Brexit, and because the thing is that then they're all on the same side, really. I might disagree with them about Brexit, but about the important things, we're on the same side.
I do think that the sort of pro-Remain camp of West Ham supporters will be much more in favour of keeping Slaven Village, whereas the Brexit people might be more in favour of the Sam Allardyce approach. Hello. Are you off? We've got to keep this going.
And just one last
final thought.
I mean, also, can you tell us what was the most polarised Talkaoke you've had?
Okay.
And how did you get everyone to love each other afterwards?
Okay. Well, I think one of our most successful ones was at the Port Eliot Literary Festival in 2007, where Port Eliot had a policy of allowing probably after this they changed their policy, but allowing locals to come in for free if they live nearby. Port Eliot is very close to a military base in Plymouth, where there's a lot of people that wanted to go into the military that had some quite different views about immigration, about UK's foreign policy to those sitting around the Talkaoke table. And it was initially quite angry clash of ideas, but over the course of a conversation, we didn't change anyone's opinion radically, but we at least got people to see the other side of the story. And there were some quite funny bits as well about, questions about how many Arabs actually exist in Cornwall taking people's jobs. Just some facts got injected. Or, for example, last year we had a conversation where people were talking about, there was a couple that were worried about mosques springing up around the country, and then there was the child of some liberal parents from Brixton saying, we've got a similar problem with Starbucks springing up in and around Brixton. And that, then that was kind of quite an interesting sort of, parallel and a kind of connection between those different things. Anyway, this Talkaoke, one of the rules about or guidelines, I should say, is that it's not down to me to talk about stuff, and it's more about you guys around the outside to come up with the answers and the questions and the direction. And Danny's just about to go, so give us a final thought before you go.
If I can just do a little bit of an advert. I'm social experimentalist on YouTube. I do lots of interference work in the streets and in public spaces, and I'm always looking for collaborators, like filmmakers like you. My name's Danny Shine. Danny Shine, social experimentalist on YouTube. I think I'll swap details with you in a minute. I'm always looking for people to come on board. It's lots and lots of fun, and this was thank you so much for creating this. It's great. I love it. Amazing.
Thanks for getting involved. It's nothing without the people around the outside. It's time maybe just to do a refresh. Thank you, Danny. Let's find out who we've got around the table. We've got a new face. What's your name?
My name is Benaz.
Benaz.
Yes.
We've got Tony, we've got Inesh, we've got Martin, Tanya, Rowan, and my name's Mikey. At the moment, we're kind of talking about, can we actually improve democracy? Can we improve, is there a better political system? How do we get people that disagree with each other talking to each other in a constructive and friendly manner? And that's really the subject on the table at the moment. Come and get involved. Come and have a seat. Have you got an opinion about this? Come and have a seat. Come and you'll find out. You'll have one by the end of it for sure. So that's where we are right now. I don't know if you've got anything you want to throw in at this point, or
Something loosely connected to what we were talking about earlier with regards to how you get over the fact that you're arguing with people in a space. I find it like when you've initially had just a minute bit of conflict with someone, it's very hard not to fixate on that, regardless of how much you have in common after that point. And it, in whatever guise that might be. Like there was a bit of discussion yesterday where I think I called bullshit on homeopathy, and I just got a glare from someone, and from that point on, I just knew that anything I said was going to have a bit of skepticism on it, and vice versa. Everything that she said, I was just like, it's no unicorn, sorry. And I just couldn't not fixate on it as much as I tried. And I think that goes for a lot of people as well. They're just if there's some element of conflict, I think it's more powerful than something that unifies. And I think it's getting over that is
all the things you've got in common with this person
kind of
go out the window because of your disagreement about homeopathy.
You can try as hard as you like, but it's always going to be there at the back of your mind. It's like, yeah, brilliant, they believe in this and that seems cool and they want good things to happen, but they believe water's magic. I can't get over that.
Okay, why? Why is that such a sort of?
I think because it suggests that there's a bigger thing that they are about that contradicts a lot of what I hold dear, which is like belief in evidence corresponding to reality greater than imagination might, and things along those lines, or fantasy rather than imagination. And if you call into doubt evidence, then you call into doubt absolutely everything that has ever been written in a textbook or that you've ever learnt or can ever learn.
Okay. Any response to that? Are the things we disagree about in a way much more sticking points than all the things we've got in common that we can agree on?
I would like to believe otherwise, but I have to agree that this is a problem, and I have seen so many friends parting over a subject which was completely arbitrary to their reality.
Can you give us an example about
For example, the main topic was immigration, and a friend of mine was vehemently for a right-wing party out of a sudden, and another friend is more or less a left-wing activist, and they kind of clashed about it. They had so much in common. They went to the same school. They were friends for 10 years. They liked the same movies, all that stuff, but they parted over this subject.
Really?
And that happens quite frequently, I think, to people. When I think about like British friends parting over Brexit, or they just say like, "Oh, I saw a side of them I don't like." I say like, even if you see someone's side you don't like, you can still negotiate with that side. You can still make something productive out of it. But sadly, not everybody thinks like that. And the question relating to that would be, how do we figure that out? And I think it isn't really figurable out because people are like they are, and that's very emotional, very...
Okay, so this is...
People can be more rational, but people have to allow themselves to be rational.
So this looks like quite a hard problem.
Yeah.
As soon as you find something where you disagree with somebody about it, everything changes, and all those things you've got in common seem to be irrelevant. Well, it's kind of up to you. If you've got something to say, then say it. Have you got something to say?
Yeah, but the thing is, I think things needs to be changed from the basic, because we took the democracy as a bonus. We forgot what is the democracy is. We just live every day without thinking actually really are we using the democracy. We don't use even democracy in our everyday living style. If my friend says something, I just stick to my opinion and I just doesn't listen, and I just wanted to wait until my friend finish her opinion, and I just want to bombard her with my own opinion. That's the thing. Things needs to be changed. We need to learn how to not to stick to the media which we're giving all the information and everything. We need to find our own resources to find out what is actually happening around the world. And for example, when I want to talk about something, you come says you are racist, you are anti-immigrant things. No, it's not that.
Yeah.
Immigration has so many issues has to be addressed. As soon as I start to talk, people looking at me and says, "Oh, she's anti-immigrant." No, it's not that. We don't learn how to deal with an issue.
Yeah.
We just kind of learn how to talk and censorship ourselves in case no one tell us you are racist, you are anti this, you are anti that.
Okay.
I can talk about the war. I can say this war, it was necessary in that time.
Which war?
I'm talking generally, but some in general. If you talk about the war, whoever want to analyze that and go deep in that, you say, oh, she provoking the war or something. We don't use democracy. We are using the democracy.
We're not properly embracing the democratic. We talk about democracy, but we're not actually doing democracy because we're going so shallow with it. Yeah. We're not actually embracing the other viewpoints. We're too quick, I guess, to accuse those who we don't agree with, such as the homeopathist person. Tony?
I was just thinking of an example of a war, the Bosnian War. That's also what I thought when you were talking, and you were talking as well about. It's kind of an extreme example, really, of how people who were previously friends, neighbours, did hobbies together, lived together, lived next door to each other, and then they were fighting each other, killing each other. And that was actually during the process of a transition to democracy as well. So just putting that out there.
Okay, so it is possible that it can go to that extreme where, I mean, would it happen over Brexit? Is it a possibility that it leads to a kind of civil war where families turn against each other? I mean, how do we avoid that kind of situation where...
I mean, I couldn't imagine it for Brexit now, but if it came up again in a couple of dozen years, because I instinctively I feel like it correlates with quality of life, and because we're quite cosy in this country, I think it would take a lot to turn us into some like civil war state. Whereas in the Balkans, it was the quality of life wasn't so brilliant that it was easier to latch onto an other as a source of antagonism, and so I think it was a lot easier to turn the state from one of peace into one of conflict. I think it would just take a bit more here, but. If standards of living go down, if we get another 8 years of who knows who, then... you
think maybe in 20 years' time, if this is still
everything can change.
Wound,
everything can change. Rome fell,
Okay. Yeah. So we've got new face to the table. What's your name?
Oscar.
Oscar, we've got Tony, we've got Ines, we've got Martin. What was it again, sorry?
Behnaz.
Behnaz.
Yes.
Tanya, I'm Mikey. What were you going to say?
The movie Experiment with Agent Brody. It was based on facts. Experiment from 1980 or 70, I don't remember. So there was two groups of people randomly selected from average pedestrians, if you like.
Yeah.
And one group was a prisoner guards. The other group, and the other group was the prisoners. All innocent people. Yes. Yeah. So they turned to be super nasty to each other after 1 or 2 days.
Yeah.
Which is not a very optimistic answer for the question from 2 minutes ago.
So if you split people into two groups, it can get nasty quickly.
So Brexit now it's Britain and rest of the Europe or
Is there on the flip side, so you're saying it's dangerous and bad things can happen very quickly. You mentioned Bosnia. Rowan said we're not quite there yet. But, should we be taking it this seriously, these kind of divisions in our society? How do we actually go the other way and get it more friendly, more constructive? Is it a serious danger?
I think Brexit, you can't get any friendly with anything because the basic of the Brexit is really, really doom. It is not right because it's whatever it is in the Brexit is against the United, and we can't get united because everything is going to get divided.
It's divisive.
The base, exactly. The base of
divisive.
The Brexit is the divisive. Then how can you use something which is actually it is in there, which is opposite what you want to achieve.
Okay.
You can't.
Okay, so Brexit by itself is divisive.
But when I think about how many people on each side, for example, think that we need to, for example, sort out the housing crisis, that we need to think about unemployment rates in certain parts of the country, when we think about the uniting factors of it, when we would put away especially media attention, from the mere fact that people voted this or that way, but say, hey, there's a common issue we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Especially media has a very guiding force to people nowadays.
So you think probably the media is a little bit to blame, but the other thing
Not really. Yeah. The media takes what's big in society, but what's big in society is not who voted for what anymore. What's big in society are the social problems underlying it.
Yeah.
And that's the responsibility they have.
Okay, so in a way it highlights this question that everyone's got about housing, about employment, about what's the other thing you said?
That was
housing and employment. Okay, we've got a new face to the table. What's your name?
Hello, Hercules.
We've got Tanya. What was it again?
Behnaz.
Behnaz, Martin, Ines, Tony, Oscar, Rowan. I'm Mikey. Have you got something to say straight off, or are you going to just?
I'm going to see what you're talking about. What's the story?
Well, we started off talking about democracy, the worst form of government imaginable, until you tried to imagine another form, and then we sort of went on to this whole thing about why do people kind of surround themselves with views they agree with? How do we engage those that we don't agree with? And then we started talking about Brexit, and that's the latest thing. How do we actually have that more constructive conversation when Brexit is such a divisive issue? And how do we actually... Some people, like Tony and Oscar over here, have said that actually it can get very nasty very quickly. And how do we stop that from happening?
Why did you say that?
Just saying what you said, Oscar. Sorry.
Just a tiny quick point, but I'll get to Tanya. But the conspiracy theorist in me wants to think that like Brexit was actually engineered to make us a more a less conflict-averse society, so that we can like bugger about and invade other countries, and there'll be less resistance to that idea. Because we kind
it's all about generating conflict.
It's analogous to the 2-minute hate in 1984. It like riles you up to such a point where when someone says, "And now we're going to invade them," you're like, "Yeah," even though you don't really want it. It's just your emotional experiment in films. It's sort of you're in the moment of anger, and you're kind of less likely to.
So it's almost a kind of anger generator.
I'd say a catalyst, say.
Yeah, anger catalyst.
But I don't know. It sounds like a conspiracy theory because it is, but it's not a million miles off.
So you're suspicious that the Brexit thing is a kind of deliberate anger catalyst to get people more angry. What? Okay, yeah.
To how do we bring people together about different subjects? I have an example. It's probably a little bit of advertisement though. I am a curator in training, and I work in a social history museum in Bristol. And what we try to do now is a sort of you decide display. We have done on different topics. For example, should the voting age be lowered? Should cars be allowed in the central city? What we now do is to develop one on Brexit. And I have the very complicated task of doing that. And that's at least an idea in the organization to start a discussion between different groups of visitors we have. And I think that shows that cultural institutions can, for example, also have a guiding force in bringing people together to facilitate discussions. And really what we do in Amshed, that's the name of the museum,
what's it called?
Is Amshed.
Amshed.
Yeah. And
Amshed. Yeah.
And that's what we do in terms of discussions. So we try to bring people together on divisive subjects, like, for example, Brexit, like, for example, voting age, like riots and race tensions and all that.
How do you bring people together in these divisive
That's a good question, because sometimes I think it's also an echo bubble. So, for example, we have displays on different topics which are always concerning Bristolians and how Bristolians see the world or see, for example, working in Bristol. We show diverse examples of people relating to the same subject. So people need to enter into a conversation, because you can't ignore the different people who have the same opinion on working for the NHS or something like that. And then we have also like events and discussions around different topics. I don't know how big certain things like Brexit can be, because we're also part of a national institution, of course.
Yeah.
But still, I think that cultural institutions can in a sense, help us to negotiate our differences.
Okay, so they can potentially bring people together with different viewpoints in a safe space, I suppose.
But the thing is, why is complicated if you have a topic which you can put it there and everyone can discuss about that? Why you see it as a complicated topic?
Well, do you think it's simple? You think it's fair?
No, I'm not saying it's simple, but I don't see it complicated because you bring something on the table and the people come to that, and everyone has a different opinion, everyone has a different approach. That can be the talking about that, negotiating and
okay, so it's not simple, but could be straightforward. Just getting people in the room, getting them talking, that's all you need to do.
Maybe you have a point. That's why I want to know why complicated.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put this out to everyone here. Is it complicated?
Yeah, I think Brexit and Trump, what they are doing really is a distraction tactic to get people off the real topics that's going on.
Yeah.
It's really, it's basically, we've got more important things to do, and we're like wasting our time talking about bullshit.
What are the more important things?
Well, there's a lot more things to be dealt with, like environmental issues, energy, renewable energy could be worked on, all kind of other problems could be solved, and we're wasting our time. Human brain, grey matter, is wasted on nonsense.
Okay.
So, until we get rid of this nonsense, talking about crap like that, they created this bullshit.
So it's a deliberate attempt to distract people.
It's just distraction technique, and we got to kind of wake up from this nonsense and say.
How do we get to actually set the agenda then and say, look, they're actually more important things?
We're taking, like schools, for instance. We're educating kids on topics, on areas that are totally useless. The jobs that they're not going to be having in the future, they don't exist. Everyone that goes to school should leave, not go to school anymore.
Are they wasting their time?
It's waste of time.
Okay.
It's like, we're having education system preparing people on learning things that are totally useless in their future.
For a past era, so to speak. Or was it not useful in the past either?
Well, in the past, because it was industrial revolution, whatever, maybe it was applicable.
It might have been more useful in the past.
Yeah, but like now, it's like, what are the kids going to school for?
Okay. Are kids wasting their time going to school? Who gets to set the agenda about what we're actually talking about? These are some that... Inej, have you got any thoughts? You've been sitting listening for a long time?
In my time, I might contribute.
Okay. Tony, were you going to say something?
I don't think school's necessarily a complete waste of time, but I do think that the methods used in schools need to be adapted for the 21st century, definitely, and that play should be encouraged at school in terms of, certainly for younger kids, rather than these targets that are being set from such a young age that I think you're right are just kind of irrelevant in terms of what they might need in later life.
Why is education not relevant? Well, not as relevant as it possibly could be. Surely we've got a bunch of professional teachers. Why are they not actually teaching the things that are relevant?
So, I think, as Tony said, schools are important, but we need to adapt it. And one of the biggest problems why we don't adapt it at the moment is the curriculum. The curriculum is not for our time, and on the other hand, teachers don't have enough time to really make things like a playground, or can talk about a certain issue what their class likes more, because they need to rush through different things.
So they're on a kind of structure, so they haven't got time to respond to what the kids are actually
doing.
thinking
The thing
about.
is, when we want to adapt the curriculum for our century, we need to think what they really need. For example, here in England, you massively fail foreign languages. I have to say that. More foreign languages in schools would be probably a very useful thing to have. On the other hand, things like discipline are enforced in English schools, like mental, and I don't think that this old-fashioned idea of sit straight, listen to what the teacher says and take everything in what the teacher says without criticism is helping you in any way.
Right.
What you need in school is probably, for example, something like critical theory, like getting people to start thinking about problems and how to solve problems.
Yeah. Okay, so more problem solving, more critical theory, a bit less discipline, a bit more languages. There's quite a few suggestions come on the table there. I'm going to come to you in a second. New face, just quickly get your name.
Adam.
But Martin,
yes, I've got to go. Thank you very much. It's been
give
great.
us a final thought for us. Throw something in that's going to help us find our way through this complicated and difficult situation.
We need more interactivity in films.
Okay.
Luckily enough, at 4 p.m. today at Stratford Picture House, there will be a film with interactivity in it. You can have a go. But anyway, thank you very much. It's been great.
Okay.
Great talk. Well done.
All right. And go and see Game Show at 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock in Stratford Picture House. You kind of rushed to the table. Have you got something immediate you wanted to say, or are you just going to listen for?
I can speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just heard you talking about like the educational system, and I'm running that stall over there.
Yeah.
But it kind of gets to me, the educational system. It's a soft topic in like.
Yeah. Is it something that just pushes your buttons?
Yeah, it pushes my buttons. Because I think I'm a pretty amazing guy, right? I don't know. You know me. I'm a cool guy, right? And I went through the educational system thinking that I was an idiot by their standards.
Yeah.
And the fact that they hold them standards, and I was overhearing you talking about. Like, why are these systems in place? Like, who decides that they work? And the fact of the matter is, anyone who's been in a position of power to decide what is on the school curriculum is someone who the school education system has worked for, because otherwise they wouldn't be in the position of power to be like, this works.
Yeah.
So the people that we're forgetting about, we've got an education system that's aimed for the few, that's aimed for the elite.
Yeah.
And I think that's enforced by all the sense of reward that you get and grading, and immediately, look at basic psychology. The minute you tell one child that he isn't as intelligent as someone else, that child's going to believe that, not live up to the potential. And that's the problem with our society at the minute, is that we are so quick to look down on other people rather than put our hand out. And the education system's that in a nutshell, and we're enforcing that from day one. And
so in a way, what you're saying is that because those that succeed in the academic system then get to make the decisions, it's a
perpetual cycle.
Yeah, it's a perpetual cycle, and it excludes all those for whom it doesn't work for. But Benaz, give us a final thought before you go.
Yes, I think about the education, which he mentioned that I am not qualified to talk about the education, but I can add something.
Yeah.
Kids are changing. Kids are become more smart. Kids are become exploring their individuality, and this is a very good thing. That's why we need to embrace that. We need to add to the curriculum. So, for example, in some schools, you can put some session which the people who are professional, like a psychologist or something, they can go to the schools and work with them and work with the kids, same as you, the rebel kids, because there are so many rebel kids at the moment in the schools, but they are very intelligent, but they get detention, they get kind of taking them down,
they're victims of this harsh discipline system.
Exactly, and they tell them you are not good enough, but the thing is, they are even better. They are genius, Yeah. That's why, of course, they can add more to the curriculum to help this kind of the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, develop something like that.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
Thanks for getting involved. Okay, so currently we're talking about the education system. There are some flaws that have been identified within it, which, just to sum up, seem to be about not being responsive to the different abilities and aptitudes of different students. Also, I think there's a question of an over-reliance on structure and not enough responsiveness, I think. I think that's a fair summary of what people have said so far about the education system.
There is a system that's tried and tested, and it works very well.
Yeah.
The Finnish education system. And everyone agrees. I mean, all the expert and educationalists agree that that system works best, and it's also proven.
What is the system?
But they don't have curriculum like that. Everyone, the classes are mixed from all different ages, and they are basically people go there to play, and they only go to school for like few hours a day.
Yeah.
It's not. They don't even have. If they want to play, they just go and play.
Right.
So it's like, but through that process, kids are more innovative. They're more, they do better in learning than anywhere. And why aren't we like? Why nobody else says, well, if it works, why not adopt? Nobody is adopting.
Well, let's put this. So, what's the name of this system?
It's Finnish schooling.
Just the Finnish school system. Okay.
Yeah, Finnish system.
Why are we not doing it like? Yeah.
Comment on that. I lived in Finland, and actually the Finnish example is quite complicated. Yes, they have less standardized tests. Yes, they go less to school, but it's still very much in this nexus. I've criticized this nexus of discipline, this nexus of detention. There is detention in Finland.
Yeah.
You can get that. But what they manage to do is that you have, for example, 2 teachers for 20 children responsible. So the teachers know much better the ability of the student and can give every student a different idea to set. They still are organizing grades.
Yeah.
But as they only have one standardized test, and that's the last test they will do, the teachers have more flexibility to adapt curriculums to what the children are actually interested in doing.
So you think it's a better system?
It is, in a sense, a better system, but on the other hand, we have to also find the faults of this system. For example, if someone is very, very shy, they sometimes don't get too much out of the system because they are too afraid to ask the teacher, can I have a more difficult task?
Right.
People can, I come from the other end of the spectrum, as Adam said. I was always treated as too smart. We couldn't do anything with me. So teachers kind of gave me harder tasks, and I was afraid to ask for even more harder tasks.
Right, I see. So you weren't really pushed in that sense?
Yeah, and that's the teacher has to have an ability to A, push a child, or B, help a child when they need it. So the teachers need to have more time to go individually to everyone.
Okay, so we've got a new face to the table. Welcome to Talkaoke. We're talking about, is that your final thought? Have you got a particular final thought you'd like to give? Would you call that? I mean, we've been talking about systems. We started off talking about the political system, the democratic system, and then we moved through to this, in a way, the media system, and then we started talking about the educational system, picking holes and flaws in all of these systems, and recommending how they could be better has basically been the theme of this session so far. Now we're talking about the educational system, how that could be better. People have got a lot of ideas about that, and it seems, in a way, a bit simpler than the political system. What's your final thought, Tanya?
Well, to wrap up everything I talked about, we can change systems. We just need to be brave enough to do. We just need to be brave enough to pressure these people in power or change the structures of power, get away from this idea of elitism and the white middle class. So we actually can do a lot, but we just need to be brave enough.
Okay, we need that I guess, self-belief, the bravery, and that sense of actually trying to make it happen. Talking about systems and power and all that kind of stuff, I'm actually going to abdicate from the swivelly chair in the middle. This is a schedule. We're not going to stop the talk yet. We're going to keep the chat flowing because the man in the red bowler hat is going to go, or not wearing the red bowler hat, is going to go in the middle. And we've got a new face to the table. Rowan's going to find out who that person is. I'm not going to. Hang on, you can't just leave like that without giving us at least a final thought. But can you give it to Rowan? And While he's changing his microphone, just tell him what your final thought is, and then we'll go from there.